we're now going to move on to the other areas of sustainability. Joe, I don't know how many people know this yet. Danny Pecorelli, Managing Director of Exclusive Collection, was supposed to be with us today, but sadly he has COVID, which is a real shame because I was so excited about interviewing or being in conversation with both him and my next guest. Sadly, that's not to be, but I have had a long conversation with him, so I do have a few sort of pearls of wisdom from him. But Joe, to make sure we're not too lonely up here, do you mind sort of hanging around?
Sure, I'll move down. It's like Graham Norton.
That's brilliant. Yes, exactly. So we don't have Danny, but as Danny said to me on the phone yesterday, it's okay, you've got the star of the show, Sue Williams. So it's so lovely to have you here, and I know Danny was absolutely gutted to not be able to join us because, as he was saying, you really are the kind of sort of the dream team. I talk to lots of people in and around sustainability. There's lots of talk, and the thing I love about you and what I see you doing and Danny is that you really care about it. You really believe in it. You're doing it because you really feel you should be doing, not because you have to do it. And I asked Danny on the phone yesterday, did he have kind of an epiphany, or what is it that makes him care about it so much? And he basically said that it had evolved over time, and the more he read, the more he educated himself, the more he realised that not just as a human being he needs to change, but he was a business leader in charge of 800 people, multi-million-pound turnover, and that, in turn, gave him a responsibility to start doing things in a different way. So I ask you the same question. Why do you care about this so much?
Well, I care because I like to think of ourselves as ethical operators, and it's just the topic that, well, I care, but I also can see that it is something that is simply not optional anymore. It doesn't that I care less. I absolutely am driven to ensure that we achieve net zero at Whatley. But the family for whom I work, I think they gave me my nudge, and it was just a very simple nudge. But they have only ever given me one word to run our business by, and I'm very, very fortunate. The word was respect. So of course that is of each other and of our property, our guests, and the environment. And so we understand we operate in an area of outstanding beauty and all that entails. So it was just, well, why wouldn't you? It's a very interesting topic.
And I think we can sometimes overcomplicate it. It is a vast and complex area, and it is challenging, but also it's also very simple, and that is respecting people, the planet, resources, etc. But there is, I'm sure, a tension between, we're devastated by COVID, a desire to get back to profits at the same level as pre-COVID, whilst also caring about the planet and people. How do you balance that tension?
Ooh, well, I'd like to reassure people in the room today that there is huge swathes of money to be saved when you start on this journey. And of course, I am not naive. I understand that the large amounts of capital expenditure are likely to be the outcome to finally decarbonise your business, energy specifically. But I think it's just like stepping off the edge and getting going, because all those sort of relatively low-hanging fruit things, so in property and on property, so in your grounds and things like that, there's so much you can be doing that simply ends up saving you money. Reel off a few examples, but that really is the case. And then while you're sort of beavering away at that, you need to be starting to gather data, because this is where it simply is going to be going forward, because I would like in the future to inform that the owners of Whatley Manor, this is the capital expenditure that we're going to require to finally decarbonise. But this is the amount of energy, this is kind of the unit price, this is going to cost, ergo, this is the size of machine I need, and this is going to be the return on investment. And that's going to be towards the final piece of us getting to net zero. But in the meantime, there's just so many creative, interesting, innovative things coming to the fore right now. The opportunities we're just tripping over them. There are so many.
Yeah, it's funny because so Danny was saying to me, first of all, he passionately believes that there is no tension. Actually, if you want to be successful, if you want to be sustainable as a hotel, you have to embrace sustainability. He mentioned two key areas. One, we talked earlier about the war on talent. He sees it as a big deciding factor for certain employees who are saying, no, I want to work for a business that stands for more than making a stack of cash.
100%. We have recruited because of our credentials. When people have, and we know in this market, and they might have half a dozen job offers, people have said, we've chosen you because of your credentials. There's no question, it's a wonderful topic to drive a young team by. It's theirs to own, it's theirs to be deeply involved, it's a wonderful thing, we can all be involved. Everybody in the building can contribute and own it and be proud of the journey. We have woven it into everything from interview to induction. We've rewritten all our HR policies to include sustainability, every component, obviously the training. Yeah, it's throughout. It's interesting.
And, that's what Kate was talking about it earlier. Other people were talking about it, attracting people into the industry, talking specifically about people under 25. Younger people care about this. This is something that is generationally, this is really important, and you're missing a trick if you don't incorporate it. He was also saying exclusive collection, 40% of their business is mice. Not actual mice, obviously. That would be quite weird. But the corporate market. So he's very aware of how important that is at procurement stage. But you also mentioned efficiencies. And one of his little examples, which I thought was quite fun, was that he just looked at getting recycled photocopier paper. Easy. Do that, tick. Someone came back and said, well, that'll cost you an extra £1,000 a year. And he was like, okay, well, that's okay. And then he thought, hold on a second, I need to ask one more question. So he then said, how many photocopiers and how many printers do we have in the business? The answer was 39 photocopiers and 61 printers. So actually, he then put the focus on, well, how can we make that more efficient? And by looking at that, he's saved money.
Fortunes. And the whole COVID thing, because we had to strip things back as well, it just made us question things. And with this subject, you question a lot more than before.
Yeah, it's all about fresh eyes, isn't it? It's about looking at things and especially get back greener. So understand the industry has gone through a hell of a time, but actually when you're starting to get back up to where you were, really just analyse. Like, we had a stupid thing about powering down kit. Why on earth we left kit on all the time? It was bizarre. So actually just fresh eyes and say, yeah, we can turn that off. That kit won't die. And it's just having that opportunity. And also on anything that we've introduced, we've made sure doesn't financially impact. You're absolutely right that there are savings. There's also sometimes revenue opportunities. Some of our suppliers are actually getting the opportunity to put solar panels on the roof, those energy opportunities to get a revenue stream from these things.
Yeah, it's there's much to it. Sue, in the context of sustainability, what are you most proud of?
Oh, you put me on the spot. I think it's getting the culture of sustainability embedded in the property, that you have 100 people all going forward. And I know we're in this time of turmoil and people are coming and going, but that I kind of own induction and sort of push the message from day one and keep that culture absolutely alive. I think that's the key thing, and seeing the excitement and the quick wins and
And I loved this. I don't know if anyone else wrote this down earlier from Kate. sometimes I think sustainability can be like trying to eat an elephant. It needs to be done one small bite-sized chunk at a time. It's not easy. Can you share a couple of examples of things that you didn't expect, and maybe things that people in the room should be braced for?
You do need to become, as Inspector Clouseau, you need to really sort of dig deep and not take things on face value, because we are now in a space of just so much noise on the subject, and I know that sums of money will be spent and unfortunately going down the wrong rabbit hole. That's a sure thing. You need to gather around you the right partners. I know, define the right partners, but it's a journey you have to go on, and you have to establish 3 or 4 people who can complete the knowledge circle, and then you can go forward together, because otherwise you can... I spent money on a compactor. Wrong. A compactor belongs in a great big factory. Yeah, I was sold, I believe that we could make our cardboard into a revenue stream. You cannot. Where do you store it? Nobody wants to take it away. Let me promise you, don't go down that route. And, luckily I only signed a year's contract, not 3, and we've moved on. But, there are sums that you can waste, but for the most part, there's opportunity.
This is a fast-moving area, and you're right, things are changing all the time, and the science also is being updated all the time, and innovation is coming along all the time, but also that human behaviour element. So sort of Danny was saying to me, there's little things like you go, yeah, we've got this, and then suddenly you realise that somebody has, unbeknownst to you, ordered 5,000 Christmas crackers with plastic tat in them, and you suddenly go, oh.
Yeah.
But you kind of have to acknowledge that, we're not perfect. No business is perfect.
Yes, exactly. And you can't throw everything out day one. When you start on this journey, you've got to work through that supply of light bulbs, because it really doesn't make sense to go and just bin them because you want to leapfrog to LED. Of course, it's a journey, that word, but it's really true. But the reward is great, because Whatley, for example, now we're entirely on LED, and we now use 75% less energy to light our property. It's just a win-win when you get there, for sure.
And that's a really interesting thing that always comes up. This is no one's perfect.
Yeah.
Why is sustainability held on this pedestal?
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's not. It's exactly right. It's a journey, and yeah, you might go down the wrong way sometimes, or introduce interim solutions because you can't get there yet.
Yeah.
You know that this is only an initial step until you can make that final move because of the capex required or whatever. But there is no perfect environmentalist, right? It's everyone. My big thing that I always say is David Attenborough eats chicken. So everyone has got a stance on it. Everyone is on a journey. Everyone's trying to make changes, and it's most important is that we are trying to take that step.
We're hospitality deliverers. We didn't all take an environmental degree and XY. So this is just completely new territory we're finding ourselves in. But generally, the hospitality sector, we care.
Yeah.
So it's enough of a driver to pick up this most pressing subject of our lifetime and understand there's no longer this, it's optional scenario. It's 100%. We're in it, and we've got really this decade does post-COP. I know we'll touch on that, but it's that we're still talking about 2050 and 2070 is really upsetting because really this 10 years ahead of us now are the most significant of our time.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the biggest messages that I'm always trying to get across is this is not about perfection. There's no such thing. Starting your sustainability journey is about accepting your imperfections. Yes. and understanding those and looking at ways of addressing them so you make every decision a greener decision or a more thoughtful decision.
Yes, exactly right.
Actually, we did have a couple of questions that came in earlier. Wayne, who from Inspired Energy, who actually has been helping us also with the HOSPA toolkit, he was sort of asking about those sort of the barriers that businesses face. And so I suppose in that same vein, I'm just going to say, what are you still struggling with? What keeps you awake at night?
Well, it is the energy piece, there's no question, because we will not achieve net zero, and we have set it, we've put our strategy together, we've put it out on our website, and we're committed. But I know full well it's going to be the energy, getting gas, we are gas-fired, so that's what we need to get rid of. I just know that at the moment, and this is what's really frustrating, because I would like to try and achieve this in the next year, jumping a bit, but I've locked our energy suppliers in for 3 years. We've got one more year of that term remaining. So for me, I'm putting myself under pressure, but I'd like to achieve it in the next 12 months. And also financially, we're going to need to, because we know that energy, costs are going up like a hockey stick graph. So why it keeps me awake is that I know that so much of the technology that's out there now is imperfect. But we're kind of all grabbing at things, and then you kind of really do a deep dive, and you go like, not so clever. So I think we just need to keep really, gather the right people around us who have the knowledge. Yeah. I do have an energy consultant. So this was a business opportunity. We moved to all renewable electricity with a fantastic company. It didn't cost me more to do that. It was just as soon as the contract ended, that was a great opportunity. But with this company, they have an energy consultant, and I get this chap called Sean for free. And I pester Sean all the time. And luckily, right partners, he's, even on Sunday evening, he'll come back to me. But he's excited about the subject, and he said, no, don't do that. So let's investigate, hold off a bit longer, And so that's what kind of worries me. I would, obviously, I don't want to let our owner down. Spend £250,000 on a piece of technology which is flawed. So, yeah.
Asking those additional questions, I think, is the thing. I'm going to actually and the other thing about this, it's kind of zoom in, zoom out type of subject area where you look at big things and then suddenly you're into something specific. And we actually had a question online from a chap called John Svitzer-Hagensen. And his question was, if the UK government bans outdoor heaters, like has happened apparently in Paris for sustainability reasons, how will you secure your guests' outdoor comfort, especially considering the increased trend in al fresco dining? Well, quite specific, yes. But...
I suppose I just look at how we delivered on this April, May at Whatley. So bioethanol can be purchased now. There is an ecologically sound one made from sugarcane, in actual fact. So it was an element of research. So we have had bioethanol sort of heaters and lights, flames out there. We bought blankets that were made from recycled plastic bottles and from Oxfam. So you're also buying from an ethical, where sort of your monies are, directed ethically. And we did have fire pits going, but we made sure that we had kiln-drying logs topped up with coffee logs. And that's how we did it. It may not be quite as slick as some of these heaters might look, but our guests were warm, and it added personality, and we knew we weren't doing any harm.
So I guess the answer, and that's just one example of where you can go, oh God, legislation coming in, oh God, that's really causing a problem. And the thing is not to say, right, well, we can't do that now. It's just to look for greener alternatives, look for alternatives that do tick the boxes, and probably look for those now rather than wait for these new bits of legislation to come in. Get your kind of house in order now.
Yep, I would agree with that. Yeah, but most certainly. With all this procurement, I have to say, most things do lead back to China. So you think, hey, I found an umbrella that's made with bamboo, and it's got all the right credentials, and it's still coming from China. So, it's not quite perfect. There's definitely challenges ahead, but there is also some phenomenal developments happening here in the UK. So, again, it's transitioning, as we all are.
So I was chatting to Danny about this as well, and he was, going back to your point, Joe, he was saying that the whole scope 3, as they call it, the supply chain, just overwhelms him. He's got 1,800 suppliers, and he's constantly looking at this action-reaction type of thing where you make a decision here and you go, right, we're going to use all local suppliers. We're not going to use the big boys anymore. We're going to go with local suppliers. And then suddenly you think, hold on a second, I've now potentially got 1,800 separate deliveries, which isn't necessarily very sustainable. And so you're constantly juggling this. Is this the right decision, or is it the popular decision? Is it the trendy sort of decision? He also has another one. He has 750 acres of land. And so he's thinking, right, well, I ought to plant some trees, carbon capture. But of course, as soon as you start looking into it, it's not as simple as that. You have to think about the trees that you're planting. Are they the right trees? Were there trees before? Would you actually be better off just rewilding? And he was saying that he almost got into a situation where he was trading carbon versus biodiversity. And again, sort of leading to more debate and more things to think about.
Yeah, but there are initiatives out there that if you've got that many acres, it's a huge opportunity because you can do land sequestration. Yes. So you can use your acres, you can use this particular company Danny's working with and I am.
That's LandApp.
LandApp,
Yep.
Who they'll come to property and they will look at your acreage, they'll look at your diversity of trees, they will look at your hedgerow and the wildlife that's on property, they do a full audit, but they can also then do a calculation to say your land sequesters X amount of tons of carbon per annum. And for example, we have measured our carbon footprint at Whatley. We have 1,801 tons per annum generated from our activities, which is our benchmark calculation, which refers to the last full trading year of 2019. Frustratingly, I can't get a result like for like because, of course, we haven't had full trading through 2021. So now I have to wait till the end of 2022 for what I hope is the reward. maybe crying. No, and obviously since that point we've gone to renewable electricity, and we've done so much in that time. So I'm hoping it's quite a significant number. But that 1,801, maybe I can take 5 tons off through the land sequestration. I don't know yet. I'm waiting for the results of that, and it's not an immediate because you really need to go through a 12-month seasonality because trees on the leaves, can't say that, leaves on the trees and things like this affect that measurement. So, but I bet the majority of people wouldn't have thought of land sequestration as an opportunity for business. I realise that doesn't help the Royal Lancaster.
Not so much.
But
no.
They'll have other opportunities and.
But there will be other things, and that's every business is completely unique, and there is no one size fits all for this.
Correct.
It is about looking at your operation and just seeing where you can make the changes.
Yeah, and it's so one of the big things is obviously the food that we consume. And so if you looked at your carbon footprint, the first thing you would say is just stop the beef and the lamb, just take the red meat off or even meat off your menu. But actually, if you can source local, sorry, dropped my microphone. If you can source local and actually embrace a great farm that you can get it from, you know where it's from, you know that actually that farm is progressive and they're looking at their footprint and they're looking at actually how they can counteract the methane from the cows, all of that kind of stuff, then why not? Why not use local and embrace that and share that that story with your customers?
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely right, yeah.
Yeah. Which kind of sort of leads me on to, there is a lot of people talking about sustainability at the moment. It seems to be a bit of a buzzword. They say sustainability is easier said than done, which is why there's more people talking about it than actually doing it. How do you ensure that this is approached with integrity and isn't just tokenism?
Most important question, I would probably say. Honestly, I think I know from having gone on this journey, it is 100% about measurement, transparency, governance. You have to measure, and this is the way through this crisis. This climate crisis is likely to be data. It really is, and I don't think hospitality bods we're in the very best at gathering our data, and certainly not on the subjects of energy and the like. But it's most definitely going to be our way through it.
I like, there's a book called Authentic Marketing by a chap called Larry Weber, and he talks about, in fact I have it in my book as well, but he talks about rather than storytelling, because that's just telling stories about sort of fiction. It's story doing and data telling. So tell people exactly what you're doing and show the data that really backs it up and makes it credible.
That summarises it perfectly.
Anything else you'd like to add on that, Jo, from a sort of people doing it from a tokenistic point of view?
It's really tricky, but I think it's really clear when you I can definitely see through it. I can see the greenwash. I can see, actually, hang on a minute, they're all about the plastic, but what are they doing for their energy? What are they doing for their transport or their food, anything like that? But I think the most important thing and the way to be authentic is that you understand that this isn't a short-term fix. You are dedicating resource to it. You are making sure it's part of someone's job. That they are then across it, because it is an ongoing thing. Just because you've introduced one thing doesn't mean exactly your cracker scenario, right? You've got to be on top of people to make sure the supply chain is absolutely where it needs to be.
And I think that's, again, the embedding it into the culture of the business. I'm often saying to businesses, yes, you can tick boxes on energy and waste and what have you, but you've also got 10, 50, 500 human beings in your organisation. If you can educate them and change their behaviour at work and at home, people start doing things differently and challenging and just seeing opportunities and seeing things through a different lens.
Yes. And get excited. They come to work with, I found this.
Yeah.
Think of this. It's like, fantastic. Yeah. I one tiny one this week. I just love this, but I do need to do a deep dive into it. But I was introduced to a paint, and the kind of it promotional thing is turn your home into a tree. But it is a paint that sequesters carbon, and it absolutely does look to be legit. So I guess I can report back further. But that's what we're going to be using going forward. And if it is a bit more expensive, I'm happy to pay that. I'll find that saving elsewhere. There's just that's just a great opportunity.
And it makes our lives easier. Right? So we've got, if we're training our staff and people are understanding why it's important, they're coming to us with ideas, and it just more brains. And that's the only way that we will get through.
And they get such a thrill if that idea sticks and we run with it.
Yeah, because it's not I'm telling you how to do something. It's them saying, we've come up with this great way of doing things. That's where I think it makes a real difference, and it's not that kind of veneer that I'm afraid we do see.
I fear that there are quite a lot of properties that have got a page, and they talk about sustainability, and they've just picked out, I don't know, maybe the towels and the local eggs or honey or something. I would take those down. Yeah. If you've got them, take them down right now until you can have some substance, because people are going to, it's a bit like lights will go out, as in people will switch off to you because they can see very clearly that unfortunately it's a not very sincere, deep approach to sustainability. It's quite dangerous. Yeah,
nobody's perfect, but if you do just a few things and try and portray yourself as being better than you are, it's worse than saying nothing.
That's it. Yeah.
A slightly bigger question to open things out a little bit. We've just come out of COP26. What did you make of it? Sue, I'll start with you.
Oh, goodness me. I think a lot of talk and sadly little substance. I was hoping for a Paris Agreement 2015 significant COP, and it's very alarming because I now question the efficacy of the mechanism of COP going forward. But the world has no other mechanism, so as we go forward with it, but it hasn't brought around really cohesive, major, progressive steps that I can see at this point.
Jo?
Totally agree. It was very disappointing. I was up there the second week, and it was actually really sad because they called it the most inclusive COP, and it really wasn't. I mean, some of the indigenous groups, some of the women, some of the youths as well, they really didn't have enough of a voice there, and you just see actually who is making these decisions, and they're not the people that are actually directly affected by it. It's very disappointing.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say I sort of share a lot of those sentiments. But I was talking to Danny yesterday, and as he said, he's relentlessly optimistic in all things. So yes, he was disappointed with elements of it, but from his point of view, he saw a coming together of the commercial world and people rocking up. And he believes in the power of business, and he was buoyed or felt a sense of optimism in what businesses can do. Governments, there's going to be loads of politics there, but businesses can step up, and he believes they will.
Yes. I mean, it's really given so much more weight and gravitas. I mean, post-COP, clearly it was going in one direction. Post-COVID, it was going in one direction, and then, of course, COP's given it another huge focus. Lots of scientific reports being, not surprisingly, were all sort of issued just pre-COP for debate, and not least our own UKH has put out its own roadmap going forward, which I do urge you to read. I think, and we've talked about it a lot, and there's a lot of information out there, but there is a formula, and it doesn't need to be rewritten. Whereas all essentially, there will be variables because we're all very individual units, but essentially this requirement to measure, to take sort of modest steps, to build your ambition, to get into more robust steps, to give yourself a target that really does sit within a 10-year time frame as a business. It is what it is. And certainly in that UK hospitality roadmap, that reflects what I've just said. It is 99 pages long, and I do think, I worry because I could even feel myself sort of going, oh, that's a bit much. But the nub of it is what we're all going to go through.
Yeah, and companies will be the ones that make the difference. We can't wait for the governments. The governments are too slow with this, but we can drive this change.
Yeah.
And I think just to do a sort of mini plug again for the HOSPA Sustainability Toolkit, it is in its early days, but the ambition, if you like, for it is that it will help hoteliers to find the right path for them. And there are lots of paths out there. So, for example, Sue, you work with EarthCheck.
Yes.
Danny, he's just become B Corp certified, which is both of those are big achievements. There are other areas.
Race to Zero.
Yes, absolutely, Race to Net Zero. There's, Kate mentioned it earlier, the Zero Carbon Forum, which is specifically focused on hospitality. That's just launched. HOSPA is also talking to a group called Green Key, which is an accreditation system that's just come to the UK from Keep Britain Tidy. So there are lots of different avenues for people, and I think certainly from HOSPA's point of view, I'd like us to be able to be in a position where we can help to point people in the right direction for what's right for them and the stage of the journey they're at.
Yeah.
So my last question, because I do want to sort of open it up as well, is it's quite a big question actually, but what's your wish for the future of hospitality?
Well, my wish is that the pendulum will swing on a number of subjects. Certainly, to be sustainable, we've got to sort of nurture our people, give them purpose, look after them, and bring them through the business. Of course, that's my absolute wish. More people to fall back in love with hospitality and drive it forward. But to do it under this framework. So when we talk about sustainability, just to really be sure, this is not just about carbon. This is, of course, a primary outcome where we've got to reduce our carbon. But you hear of ESG, environmental, social, governance. It is the people, it's the social piece. It's about our little community in property, on property, our local community and that of the world. We are a wealthy nation, and there is climate injustice, and it is very real, and there are hundreds of thousands of people out there in the world today feeling the sharp end of climate change now. And we spoke of this, but borrowing somebody else's words, Paul Polman, we have won the lottery of life, ladies and gentlemen. We live here in the UK. We're a wealthy nation. We're north of the equator, and our world is still relatively comfortable. I had to write a climate change risk assessment as part of this journey we've been on, and I was like, well, I don't see fires, and I don't see drought, and I don't see other, but how is it? Because it is going to affect us all. It's just going to catch up with us a little bit more slowly. Ours is going to be wet. We're going to be, more rain. We're going to have more floods. We're going to have these variances in temperature. Sea levels will rise. We will, our world and our properties and our GDPR for this country is surely going to be affected. It's evidenced in Germany and other European countries already. It isn't just the reserve of the Sahel, Asia, all these, Bangladesh, but those are the people right now who are having to migrate, anyway, I'm not my political agenda, but it is so true. So we have a responsibility when we go on to, we're going to decarbonise our business and we're going to follow the social element. You hear of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. Those were also written in 2015 by the United Nations, and we are required to weave those in to all that we do when we go on this journey. Again, it's not optional. We're decarbonising and we're embracing those goals which reflect things that we enjoy currently, which is clean water, I want to say responsible work, clean food, education, all these sort of things around the world. Yeah. And that you can look them up. They're depicted as jigsaw puzzle pieces quite often because they all interlink. And you need to look at your business, you need to look at those sustainable development goals and see where you can make a contribution. They are 17, and some of them refer to oceans, and we're landlocked, and so yes, you can perhaps look at your fish resourcing, but essentially they
are a good resource, aren't they?
We map them over our business, and we've just at this moment picked out 6 where we feel we can make a major contribution. Yeah,
and I think that's the thing. It's a great framework for it. There's also a thing called the Good Life Goals as well, which is sort of the sustainability goals, but re-engineered, if you like, in a slightly more accessible way. We could talk all afternoon, and no, but I'm being told we have to. Now, I apologise to the room because we got sort of carried away in our questions there. We do need to wrap this up, so I'm not sure we've got enough time for questions, but we're going to be here, aren't we, during the afternoon break? So would it be better if I just say if anybody wants to talk to us about this subject, you can clearly tell that we care about it, come and find us and come and have a cup of tea with us in the break. Is that fair enough?
By all means, yes.